And
here
we're
we are.
on.
Hey, Cristina.
Hey, Lisa.
It's our first official Baking Scraps podcast. How excited are you? That excited?
So excited. Excited and totally freaked
Yeah, I
out
understand.
at the
Me
same
too.
time. Probably how bakers feel when they step into that tent
I
on Great Canadian
cannot
Baking
even
Show
imagine.
or the British Bake
The Great
Off.
American Baking Show, which I
right?
guess is premiering today, the day that we're recording.
Yeah.
It's season 2.
That's
Did you know they had a
awesome.
season 1?
I think I heard that. I have not watched it though, so I have no idea what streaming service it's on. But that's par for the course for me. Like when somebody asks me, "Oh, who streams whatever show?" And I'm like, Netflix, Prime,
somewhere.
Apple, one of those.
Welcome to the first official podcast episode of Baking Scraps. This is the Sweet Talk with Lisa
and Cristina.
And before we get into anything, I want to ask you, Cristina, what are you working on these days, baking wise?
Well, I am working on a fun little project. I have been asked to go to a high school locally here and teach some grade 11 and 12 students how to make Italian macarons. So I've got to get prep done. Yeah, it's one of the things that I've really honed my skins on.
A blooper.
We'll edit that out. That's one of the things that I really took great pride in learning how to bake all by myself and through a ton of trial and error over the many, many years. And if anybody out there has tried making macarons before, you know that it's a tricky process. It takes time, it takes patience. And if anybody out there has made macarons before or attempted to make macarons before, even if you're a seasoned pro, any given day can make a huge batch of macarons. So,
macarons?
You know, it has macarons. Yes.
Macarites.
That's what I said.
I
know they should be called macarites when they actually turn out well, right? But yes, they definitely test your patience and your whether or not you want to keep baking some days.
Mm-hmm.
They're that bad sometimes. Yeah. But the more, it's like everything you do, the more you do it, the more consistent they become, and you learn every single time out that you're baking these tasty little nuggets of joy. They give me great joy. So anyway, so that is what I'm working on. How about you? What kind of fun stuff are you creating in your kitchen, Lisa?
I've got a whole bunch of wedding cakes coming up for wedding season. But tonight, the cake that I've made for tonight is actually for a friend of mine who is reinventing herself. She has decided that her life she just needed to make some changes. And she's celebrating those changes with a reinvention party. So she asked me to make a cake, 3-tier dragonfly themed reinvention cake. So that has been really fun working on that. 2 tiers of 2 different flavors. I did a lemon one with lemon curd and a pistachio. And then the top tier, she said, let's have I think she said a tidget of gluten-free for the gluten-free peeps. So the entire 4-inch top tier is the gluten-free vanilla with my toffee bits inside. So that's one thing that I'm working on. And then I have to bake another one, and it has to be in the shape of a sphere, which was my major baking fail last night when I forgot a couple of my own tips and tricks about how to bake something in a sphere shape, and wasted a whole lot of burnt sugar syrup, which was really sad. So I'll do that again.
Oh. That's always painful. But yeah. And so baking something in a sphere, what does that involve? I don't think I've ever baked something in a sphere before. So I would love to learn more, as I'm sure our baking community would too.
Well, it actually is it's a baking pan that is in the shape of a half sphere, and it has a little stand that you can put it on so that it will stand on the oven racks or on a baking sheet in the oven. And then you just have to really be aware of how are you conducting that heat, because that strange shape, you're going to end up with needing a lot of extra time for the middle part, which is really thick. And then of course, not as much for the edges. So you have to find that balance. I have a couple of different tricks that I've used for that. So I don't know if you ever use cake strips for your baking pans. They're little pieces of cloth that you get wet and then put around the edges of your pan. And that just kind of really helps with the even conduction of heat. Usually that's for baking like flat layers of cakes. But for
Mhm.
the sphere, what I have been doing is wetting the cake strips and putting them inside a 6-inch baking pan, and then I set the half sphere inside of that. So that kind of helps conduct it a little bit more. And then the other thing, which I forgot to do yesterday, is I have heating cores, which look kind of like flour. What do you call them? Things that you do
Yeah, like
flour
that. I
nails.
know. Yeah, the little flower
Flower
nails.
nails.
Yep.
They look like that. And when you put the heating core inside at the bottom of the sphere of this pan, that also helps conduct the heat evenly so that it's distributing from the inside of the sphere all the way out. And then you have to just bake it for an extra long time, unfortunately, which is it's tricky. So they looked like they were done yesterday when I took them out, and I was like, I tested it with a toothpick and it was like, maybe it needs a little bit more time. And then I said, trust yourself, Lisa, and took them out, and they completely collapsed because they were completely raw in the middle. So, yeah,
Oh
not serving
no.
that one. So we start all over again, and I'll listen to my own baking scraps, tips, and tricks this time.
There's so many resources online
Yeah.
and the baking communities that are available on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. It's all amazing, everything that people are willing to share.
The
And uh,
number of screenshots that I have, the number of things I've saved on Facebook and Instagram, and then it's like, oh, I remember that thing that Alina made. Oh, I really want to go back and make it. Where the heck did I save that to?
I know. And that's the fun of baking,
Yeah,
right? Is just trying different things and the learning,
yeah.
right? Here's the other thing. Even when you have those quote unquote baking
Mm-hmm.
fails, they're still tasty delicious. So somebody's going to enjoy something that maybe doesn't turn out as well as you hoped or what's in your mind.
As long as
So,
it's not
but
raw.
true.
All right. Okay, so if everybody could just welcome our latest and most exciting, well, our first and great, exciting guest. This is Loïc, winner of season 7 of the Great Canadian Baking Show. Welcome, Loïc.
Woohoo,
Hey, thank you
Loic!
so much for having me on the show on episode 1. That's an honor.
We really
Well,
appreciate
it
you
is an
being here.
honor and yeah, it's definitely an honor and privilege to have you on the show. So thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And I'm sure it's going to be a special treat for all of our listeners as well. So thanks, Loic.
Thank you.
And we start off by asking each other every episode. So, what are you working on? So, why don't you tell us a little bit about what are you baking these days?
Well, right now I'm in the middle of trying a new recipe from a cookbook that I bought recently. It's a beet and ginger cake from Sweet from Ottolenghi. I'm halfway through right now. All my ingredients are measured and prepared, and after this interview, I'm gonna go and bake it.
That sounds absolutely delicious, and I'm sure the color on that is spectacular.
Yeah.
Now, do you start with actual beets and cooking those down and using those, or do you use the freeze-dried powder for that cake?
No, it's pretty much like a carrot cake, but with beet.
So,
Oh,
your
so
fingers all
shredded.
stained red.
Shredded, exactly. Yeah, I used glove because I have other things after.
Smart.
That makes total sense. That's total sense. So, well, that sounds awesome. I look forward to seeing your creation, hopefully posted on your Instagram page so we can kind of see how that goes and
Well,
let us know how it ends up working out.
if you see it, you will know that it went well, and if you don't see it, well, you can you can infer what happened.
I just
Fair
understand that
enough.
so
Fair
well.
enough. Yes, we all do, I think. We all do. But I think we should actually make more of a habit of actually sharing some of our fails so it doesn't look like, Loic, you're perfect every single time, right? And so, for people to aspire to that level of perfection, right, is really cool, but it's kind of nice to actually see, maybe something that isn't so beautiful all the time
That's
as
what the
well.
story is for, you know. Disappears in 24 hours. You can post things that look okay, and then if it makes it to the post, then it has to be a little bit better.
There you go. That's a good way of doing it, actually. Story fails, and then everything that looks picture perfect, social media perfect will go on your post. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
It
I
because
has to
love
be
that's
it.
an
what
album
stays
of
there.
fails, though. Maybe as a year recap, I could post all my fails in a reel or something.
Do you actually still have them
is
on your phone or in your camera
Oh yeah,
album?
I keep pictures of pretty much everything I bake, and I have quite a few fails.
I don't
I
believe
think
it.
we all do. Yeah, I personally don't either, but I can see how that happens. I think even the best of bakers have those moments where it just didn't work out as well, and that's okay too. And like we were talking earlier, Lisa, like those fails are what makes you actually become a better baker and learn how to do it better the next time
Yeah.
as well, and maybe changing some stuff up. So, but it definitely gives you that motivation because if you're perfect, then why do you even bother trying anymore, right?
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
have this curve when I bake. The first time I bake something new usually turns out okay. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to improve it. And then I start tweaking it. And then things start going really sideways for like the second and third. And then I kind of come back to like a level of acceptability.
And then you make it awesome after that. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
awesome.
try 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I think is something we'd all love to know is how did you start baking? Like, did you have inspirations along the way? When did you start baking, and what
Because it
brought you
was pretty recently, is my
to bake to
understanding.
begin?
Yeah, I essentially started baking when I decided that I wanted to be on the Great Canadian Baking Show. Um,
Wow.
it's a funny story. One day I came back home and my partner then was like, "Oh, I started watching this show. It's about people in the UK baking in a tent," and I was like, "Wow, that sounds so boring." Uh, and then I started watching the show, and it was not as boring as I initially thought. And then I really became a fan of the show. And then when Canada started doing the franchise 7 years ago, started watching the Canadian. And one year I was watching Canadian and British kind of simultaneously, and really was impressed by how bakers were progressing in the tent and how there was like this friendship developing. You could really see it amongst the bakers of those seasons. And just threw it out there. I was like, oh yeah, I'd like to go on that show. And obviously, like, people around me were like, "Well, you don't really bake that much." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'll learn how to bake." So yeah, the show really became a companion in my baking journey. I was like not necessarily baking along every week, but I was always kind of trying the challenges that I never tried before. Uh, Baking mostly during the period of the year where the show airs, and then I started applying for the show quite a few times. And I'm actually quite grateful that the show did not take me the first year I applied, because I was not ready. And then yeah, ended up making it on the show. So it was really full circle for me.
That's
That's pretty
amazing.
cool.
And sometimes things happen for a reason, right? And so maybe those opportunities you did make it on the show the first few times that you applied for really allowed you to really go back and hone even more of those skills. And obviously that worked for you because you not only represented BC, but your hometown of Creston so very well by actually winning season 7. So that is so incredible. And congratulations again for that amazing win. And it was such a pleasure watching your journey in that tent. And as I'm sure everybody else just loved watching you bake.
Thank you. You talk about journey. It's really how it felt, and it's really what brought me to the show. As I just said, like seeing participants really like progress, and that's exactly what happened for me when I first got to Toronto and met the other bakers. I was like, "Whoa! I do not stand a chance. They took me too early. I'm not ready for this." Like some of the other participants have been baking for longer than I'm even alive. So yeah, I really didn't think I would make it this far in the show. So it's been a lot of learning and a lot of hard work as well.
Yeah, no
I
kidding.
bet.
Well, how do you prepare for that? Like the whole idea of baking in the tent, you have some time leading up to the show before you get to Toronto to actually do your practicing. But how do you prepare for baking in that iconic tent, like both mentally and physically, and in terms of honing your baking skills?
Yeah, well, you train to bake in this tent. There's many components. I always say that winning the baking show is not necessarily about being the best baker. It's about being the best baker in that specific environment. It's about learning how to bake in the tent while you're talking with hosts and judges
Mhm.
while you're being filmed, while you're explaining what you're doing, while you're under time constraint, heat constraint, and
Yeah.
it's really it's a very different environment than your own kitchen. And I think
Mhm.
people who do well on the baking show are people who are able to become comfortable in the environment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Before you arrive there, there's like so many other things. Personally, I trained a lot for the technicals, making sure that I master like as many basics as possible, because we never know what part of the recipe they will omit. Um, so looking at other franchises of the of the baking show, whether it's like the British one or like in France and everything. Before I got to Toronto, I had cross-referenced all the technicals that had been made in other countries that we have not yet have on the
I'm
Canadian show,
taking
and made
notes.
sure
Yeah,
comfortable
right? Everybody take notes.
comfortable with those basics using cue cards and learning the ratios. So that's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
And obviously, like there's an amazing team on the baking show that helps
Mhm.
you getting ready for the show.
Yes.
They always push you to do a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And sometimes it's frustrating, especially when you feel like you're giving everything you got, and they're like, "So how is it going to be impressive?" And you're like, "This is already the most impressive thing I made ever." What do you mean? But when you see it on
Oh,
TV, you're so grateful that they pushed so hard, because yeah.
Oh, and
that's
your
crazy
bakes
because
were very
sometimes
impressive. We
Mhm.
loved watching. We were watching
Absolutely.
a couple of the episodes together, and we were just like, "Oh, wow, look at like," and you're so calm, cool, and collected appearing the whole entire time, and we were just
Except in episode 7, I recently rewatched the season, and I was like, episode 7, I don't know what happened. I was just on a high. My energy is so intense.
okay. We got to go
You
back
were
and watch
so
that
fun to
episode.
watch.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we do. I think challenge accepted. We're going to be watching season or episode 7 of season 7 again very, very soon, Lisa.
Yeah.
So what was the most challenging part for you? I mean, that those technical challenges, some of them were crazy. And obviously you did a lot of prep, and that was brilliant, by the way. I think I never would have thought to do that kind of research that
Mhm.
you did. And so I think that's really amazing to go to that level of research on those technical bakes on other shows. But for you, what was the most challenging part of the whole competition?
For me, the most difficult challenge of the three is always the showstopper. They are really longer bakes that take a lot of stamina. And personally, this is not so much how I bake at home. Usually, I do a little bit more like functional baking where I focus on flavors. My bakes often look more like the signature bakes or the technicals. But that level of decoration and presentation that we put in the showstoppers, this is not something I was doing before. So definitely, these were a bit challenging, and it's also related to the fact that when you practice a 4 or 5 hour bake, you cannot do it over and over again. You only have so
Mhm.
many hours in a day. So
Mhm.
these bakes are often less rehearsed, less practiced, or you tried a couple components here and there, but they really come together sometimes for the first time in the tent. So
Makes
for me,
sense.
that was the challenge.
Yeah, that would be nerve wracking for sure. You've done, like you said, a little bit of that practice time in advance, but then to actually really see it fully come together for the
Mhm.
first time in such extraordinarily challenging environment, and weather is probably one of those, that, like, how did
Yeah.
you overcome
The
that
heat.
adversity of the heat, not only for you personally, like from a physical standpoint, but then in terms of like baking, and especially working with things like chocolate and things that are temperature sensitive.
Well, to begin with, I avoided working with chocolate at all costs.
Right. That's a very
um,
reasonable thing to do.
yeah, something I learned maybe like around episode 3 is that the things that might go sideways will likely go sideways in the tent. And I really started changing how I prepared to kind of like either avoid that or make sure that I had really kind of like foolproof recipes or approaches, because I kind of walked in the first couple challenges with a little bit of a naive mindset, being like, oh yeah, like it's working 2/3 of the time in practice, it'll work in the tent. And it's proven to that's not how things happen. Um, Being fast also helps.
Mhm.
You're always refrigerating things. You're always you don't keep things on your work bench for very long. As soon as something is ready, it's going in the fridge. So having the element of speed definitely helps in the tent. And there's also like an element of preparation, like
Mhm.
just having all your instrument in a bath of ice if you are actually planning on needing something to cool fast, or having all like your baking trays. That, let's say I'm making a pastry cream, I'll have like my baking tray in the freezer before I even start
Mm.
making it, so that when it goes on the baking tray, it's cold and it helps like cooling faster. So there's so many little tricks like that are part of learning how to bake in the tent environment, that come in kind of the pre-prep. And if you look at my recipes, it's all like written. It's like, put that knife in the bucket of ice, put the tray in the freezer, and then start your bake. Yeah.
The
And then the
little
most extreme
reminders.
case,
Yeah.
was, I don't remember which challenge, but it was very hot. Hands were hot, and sometimes we use that cooling spray in the tent, and we were all literally like cooling spray our fingertips and touching our breaks and cooling spray our fingertips again. That was probably the hottest day in the tent. So,
Oh, I can't imagine. So the environment is so completely different from your own kitchen.
Mhm.
So that yeah, it's just extraordinary circumstances that you guys go to and deal with when you're in that tent. So kudos to everybody who makes it into the tent and
Mhm.
then also survives the tent.
Yeah.
yeah, and kudos to Camila, who decided to temper chocolate every single episode, no matter the temperature. That's something I would not have tried.
That was her challenge.
Camila
So
was
did you
reckless.
That was reckless.
I mean, it's all in the challenge, right? I mean, it sounds to me like you kind of thrived on the challenge of it a little bit. Like I can just picture you kind of walking in there like, okay, let's see, how can I manage to make this work today? But you prepared appropriately and well. And I mean, I'm sure Camilla prepared appropriately too. She didn't just go in there ready to temper chocolate thinking, I guess it's going to work out somehow. No, she had her backup plans. She had to.
Yeah, it's also it's really a big game for me.
Yeah.
That's the game that I like. At home, I
Yeah.
do way better when I bake just before going to work or when I have a time constraint. So yeah, when I walked in the tent for a technical challenge, like there's tension. Some of the participants are stressed. Some of the bakers are, like sometimes the stress is so much that you're a bit like, I don't know, it affects your mood. And I'd always be the
Mm.
one being like, hey, this is fun. It's a game. We're gonna have
Yeah.
fun, even if it's
Yeah.
stressful, even if it might not work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And having backup plans, probably backup plans to your backup plans to your backup plans sometimes probably is maybe something that works too.
Yes,
Or
backup
just being
plans,
able
and
to,
also the ability to think on the spot. Like,
Yeah.
one day I made a color out of chocolate on the milk crepe cake, and then I for some reason I forgot to remove like a part on the color, and then like the top was all jagged, and it was like 28 seconds, and I was like, how am I going to adjust that? And then I just turned on all my stovetop elements and put knives directly on the stovetops, and I would just like heat the blades and then cut my color with the heated blades and then return them to the stovetop. And it was just like completely ridiculous. But when you have 30 seconds, you need to be like, okay, like I need a solution for that. And yeah,
It's
that's really impressive, Loic. Like
yeah, it's
that's
the quick
crazy.
thinking. Good
it looked
job.
like juggling knives.
I mean, you had so many incredible creations. I think one that stood out in my mind was your cassette tape Pop Tarts. Those were so much fun and so incredibly creative. And but what was your favorite bake from the competition, and why?
Not the cassette tapes.
Not the
There's
cassette
there's a
tapes.
backstory to the cassette
I
tape.
love the cassette tapes.
It turned out
Maybe that's because I grew up during that era.
when I got that idea, I was like, this was one of the challenges where I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll stick with it. And then I was developing that recipe with the fondant, and I'm not a big fan of fondant, and I had a lot of leakage on my cassettes. And then in practice, one day I woke up super early, like 3 a.m., did all my bake, timed myself, and I was like, okay, I think I mastered it. I'm ready to move on to the next challenge. And then someone looked at that and was like, yeah, that's a good start. and then I just lost it. And then like I remember like I was doing pastry and there was flour on the counter, and like my tears were literally like making dough with the flour left on the counter.
Oh,
Oh, that's so
So that was
sad.
not my favorite bake.
that is
That kind of
One of
breaks my
my
heart a
favorite,
little bit, I gotta say.
right. That moment of sheer despair. That how
yeah,
did like
I have to say, like the weeks of preparation were harder in a way than the weeks of filming on the show, because
Mhm.
you're at home, you're preparing for that kind of vague idea that you're going to go on the baking show, but it's not quite reality yet. It's really hard to imagine, and you're by yourself, and then you never know when you should stop practicing. You can always squeeze
Mhm.
in one more practice a day,
Mhm.
as opposed to when you're on the show, then everyone's there sharing your emotions, going through the same thing. There's a pretty tight schedule, so at one point you cannot practice more because you need to go on set and do it for
Yeah.
real. So yeah. Returning to our question of what was my favorite bake during the season, I would say that my uh, signature for the finale, the torta diplomatica, was one of my
Mm.
favorite bake. There was a lot of components in there where I was pretty comfortable. I liked my flavors. And I also kind of like doing pastry over cakes. And we had a pretty cake heavy season,
Mhm.
with a lot of kind of cakey technicals. So that was really fun to make, and I was quite happy with what I presented, and the judges were happy as well. I also quite like the
Obviously.
flavors of
They
my
were.
lace cookies.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
I know,
Are
I know.
you like
Kyla said that she would come to a garden party in my backyard if these were the flavors of my backyard. So I was happy with that.
That's a pretty good
it was
compliment.
I would say so, and it was spectacular. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, it went very well for you in that on that final episode, and winning the show. Um, Now, were there any memorable moments for you that really stuck out in your mind, that you would like to share with us? Maybe some an interaction with Bruno or Kyla or Alan and Anne or one of the other bakers of your season 7 baking family.
Oof, that's a big question, because there are several memorable moments, with pretty much everyone you named. I think with the bakers, there's a couple moments that really show the vibe in the tent, or outside of the tent. One of them that you don't see during the season is literally happening as we are walking. There's always this shot where we walk in the field,
Mhm.
and during that shot, we actually talk about real things. And then Candice, we're about to do our kitsch cake, 3-tier, pretty big cake, and then Candice is like, "How many dowels are you putting in there?" And I'm like, "Dowels? What is that?" Because I'm not a cake guy. Um, so then everyone kind of like gathers like closer to me, and they're like, "You're not putting dowels?" I'm like, "I don't even know what they are." And then Andrew is like, "Well, you're putting cake plates at least." And I'm like, "Cake what?" And then like everyone was like, "You're not putting cake plates or dowels on your cake." And I'm like, I don't know. No, I don't think so. And then they're like, "No, no, 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 you can't do that. Like you need structure in
Oh,
there. Like it's gonna collapse." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. It didn't collapse during practice." And then like suddenly like we're all being filmed, but we're all kind of gathered around this like problem that I don't know what dowels and cake plates are. So then yeah, I walk in the tent, and then I immediately told like the culinary team, I was like, "Whatever Candice is going to be using today, like bring some for me as well." Like I
I
don't know
need
what they're
dowels. I
for.
need cake plates stacked.
You're like, I have no idea
But
how I'm gonna use them or what they are, but give them to me, please. I'll
But I
figure it
need
out.
them. But I need them.
yeah, learning on the spot. But that really shows how all the bakers are really there for each other.
Hmm.
Each of our goal is always for everyone in the tent to do their best, and often we've
Yeah.
seen the practice bakes of others, and it's really disheartening when you see someone not doing as good as you've seen them do at
Mm,
the hotel or like in pictures before.
Hmm.
So that's really a story that exemplifies how the camaraderie and the friendship is what is the priority on the show.
Yeah. And that's one of the
Um,
things that we've really talked about here is that, I mean,
mhm,
that's how Christina and I became friends. That's how we got to know you. I mean, in person, as opposed to just watching you on TV, is just this whole community and how everybody in this online baking community supports each other so much. And so I can only imagine how much higher that energy is in the tent.
Oh yeah, it's at all time. We're always tasting each other's bakes at the hotel. One day I brought my eggless sponge, and everyone was like, "You cannot serve that in the tent." Anyways, no, that's another story. But
That's a great story.
but yeah, they thought I was kidding. They thought it was a joke, and that I was not gonna serve that. And I was like, "No, that's my cake." And they were like, "No, you can't.
Oh no.
We won't let you go in
So
the tent with that."
did more tears flow and into your cake batter
No,
that night?
no, there was a couple tears, obviously, like here and there. Like the
That's
low
new meaning
moments.
to tiered cake.
I had a low moment because of mirror glaze, and then we
Mm.
realized that all of our mirror glaze were not working, and that we were all using kind of the same recipe. So we
Ah,
together kind of like moved on to another mirror glaze. I also considered changing like my whole concept for my anti-gravity cake at the last minute, and then Camila kind of like convinced me not to, or like ordered me not to. She was like, "No, you're not changing your concept." She
smart.
was just like, I needed some new materials, and she just like dragged me out of the hotel. We went shopping and found everything I needed. But
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
um,
It's
yeah,
It's
I
something
mean,
you
that
have
part of
to.
the experience I think is so worth your weight in gold, right?
Mhm.
Like to have that family and that bonding and you're literally going through like quote unquote war together, right? You're in the trenches together and you're trying to do all this, and that support for one another is truly special, and you really see that in the interactions on the show, but then also even more so after the show and the interactions on social media and how much love there is for everybody as part of that family, but also the entire alumni group
Yeah.
of the bakers. So that's got to be really special, and I think that would be one of the things that would attract me for wanting to be on the show, to be
Mhm.
honest, is being able to be part of that greater family and
Yeah.
that that unique baking community that has this shared experience.
absolutely. I was saying earlier, like when I said like, "Oh, I want to be on that show," like that episode, they were like, "Oh yeah, like that's even better than yesterday at the hotel." That's one of the only reference in like all baking show kind of like repertoire where they mention like the practice. And it was just like a moment for me where I was like, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
there's this
Yeah.
whole life that happens around the show, and it sounded so fun, and I was like, I want to do that. People often ask if the show is scripted, if
Mhm.
their interactions with the judges and the hosts are scripted, and they are not. We One moment that they didn't show on TV is one day I had like my own homebrewed beer for a challenge, and then they brought a chair for Alan, and Alan and I sat on chairs in the tent and had a glass of beer. And obviously they decided not to show that on CBC, but that was really a fun moment to
This
capture.
is
And
awesome.
same thing with the judges. Like there's yeah, there's just so many of those.
That's so
Oh, it's so
awesome.
cool. That's so cool. Now, the other support you got a ton of was from your hometown of Creston. And, not only were they incredibly supportive, but so incredibly proud of you for especially showing your community all the love that you did on the show. What role does your community really play in your baking journey, both before the show and more importantly, probably after the show?
Yeah, as you said, like the community really gathered around my experience. When the first episode aired, we decided. Well, a lot of people were asking if I was going to do a public viewing, so we invited everyone we knew to the local microbrewery where I occasionally work. And um, there was quite a big turnout. And what was funny is that obviously like people did not know if I was going to make it to episode 2 and then episode 3. So I had to invite people from week to week without really ever giving them like a heads up. So when I saw all these people and then they were like, yeah, we want to come back for week 2, and I was like, you have no idea what you're getting yourselves into, because I knew they were going to have to come to
They had to
the
go.
bar 8 weeks in a row to watch my show, but they did not know. But yeah, the attendance was just like rising from week to week. And it was really fun to
Awesome.
see so many people who are not necessarily interested in baking, who were just there to support me and like watch like every episode of the show, and like were aware of my bakes, even if that's really remote from their interests. So the community really came around after. Obviously, before the show, I was inspired by my community in a variety of ways. I live in a very kind of like agricultural and harvest rich valley. So a lot of like the flavors were inspired by Kristen.
Mhm.
There's a couple bakers here in town that I hang out with who I was inspired with. But just in general, like sharing baked goods with people has always been kind of like one of the ways in which I interact. So it's always been a very social thing for me to bake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. And I'm sure your hometown crowd was so thrilled to be able to go to that pub every 8 weeks. Like you
Week after
needed
week.
an excuse to go to a pub anyway.
Yeah,
And I'm sure you probably treated them for with some of your baked goods along the way. And so that was probably another added incentive for them to stay along on that journey with you.
they were slightly offended when they said in episode 1 that I lived in remote Creston. They still talk about it. But yeah, I brought a lot of baked goods every week. Yeah, that was fun.
I
Yeah,
think BC
awesome.
has been very well represented, so we really appreciate how well you. I
Mhm.
mean, Creston definitely, and I don't think I knew much about Creston beforehand, but you've done well, and thanks for being a BC
It's a
baker.
great community where people really gather around new projects. You know, whenever someone's like, "Oh, I want to do something," people are like, "Yeah, this is amazing," and the town really
Yeah,
shows up for whatever happens. So it's a very
that's awesome,
very fertile environment for new projects and ideas.
That's that's awesome.
fabulous. So, as the season 8 bakers are just getting into the tent now and beginning their own journeys, what words of wisdom do you have for them?
Well, if I had to give an advice to the new cast of season 8 of the baking show or anyone going on a baking show in the future, is to have fun. Um, People are going to be tired, people are going to be stressed, but ultimately they worked so hard to get there, to get to bake in the
Mhm.
tent. Like, so for me, it was really important not to forget that it was an enjoyable experience at all time. Sometimes, you know, when they are filming the announce of the challenge, where the hosts are describing what it's going to be, they have to do more than one take. So then,
Mhm.
you know, you're just there, you're smiling, and then you hear get set, bake, and then they're like, no, 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 we're gonna do another shot of this, and then this is so nerve wracking. You're like, at one point, they're gonna say bake for real, and I'm gonna have to bake, and in those moments, I would just like look down and then look up again and be like, okay, yeah, I'm in this tent, this is what I wanted to do. It's going to be awesome. Time is going to fly. I'm surrounded by people I really love. So, yeah, not forgetting to have fun, even if it's super stressful or even if it's super warm and you're sleep deprived or whatever. Like, yeah, enjoying the experience. And I think it also shows in the baking
Mhm.
when you're motivated, when you're enjoying the ride. Often things go better.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. What a great piece of advice for that new crew of bakers in season 8, which I cannot wait to see who's on the show and what they get up to this season.
I
Yeah.
know we've
So
seen a couple pictures on social media that just like hint that the new season is being recorded right now,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's a mix of excitement or like a bit of FOMO or like
nostalgia
it's a bit,
and
We feel the FOMO.
yeah,
We
oh
feel the
yeah,
FOMO.
we're feeling the FOMO right now, Loic.
We're feeling the FOMO every single season. No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry.
No, you know
It's
what?
okay. It's
It's
just
like
not
you
our
said.
time yet, right?
One of the things, like what as Loic you were saying, like you were glad that you didn't get in the first time you tried, or maybe the second or the however many times you tried, because of the fact that it gave you that opportunity to hone your baking. And it has been hard to try out and try out and try out. But I mean, in the 4 times that I've applied to be on the show, I see how much my baking has improved. And I can
Mhm.
only hope that this season of practicing baking for the next year is going to improve my chances for some future season. So, yeah, we have to look at it that way instead of being disappointed, because now we just get excited to be able to actually watch the show and enjoy that whole feeling that got us interested in baking in the first place, right?
Exactly. And I think as a result of that, I mean, it's not making it on the show this year, not being successful to bake in that tent for season 8 has really brought us together. And this is how this whole podcast idea came about.
Yeah.
Is our shared passion for baking and sharing our baking journeys on through social media. then getting a chance to meet all the wonderful people. And it was definitely a treat for me to meet you at the auditions in Vancouver this year. I mean, it was so wonderful that you guys came out to support the potential new bakers in that tent. And I think it meant a ton to me. So I'm sure it's meant a ton to so many people, and inspiring them to continue baking. And
Well, you two
whether
and your group of friends really stand out. Like I think you do all the bake-alongs, and I think every alumni of the
she
baking
does.
show know you. And yeah, that's pretty impressive. And yeah, that was fun.
And
That was fun to meet everyone at the live audition. Like that's
Yeah.
everything that kind of is part of the show outside of the 8 episodes is really it's just so fun. It's part of it makes it more than a show. It makes it a community.
Yeah.
it
It's
really
really
does.
great.
And that's really the brilliance of the Great Canadian Baking Show, and the baking community on social media as well.
Yeah.
So it's as Lisa mentioned before, it's just such a supportive group,
Mhm.
and there's so much love for each other, and really it's about inspiring everybody to just get in their kitchens and get baking, and
Yeah.
and share that love.
Yeah.
So it's really special. What is your go-to comfort bake when you're at home and you want to make something special for yourself? Do you have a go-to?
Ooh. Well, I don't really. I tend not to bake the same thing twice, pretty much ever, except if I really have to like perfect it or develop a recipe or make something for the baking show. My absolute favorite baked good is the apricot croissant, also called the abricotine. It's essentially a puff pastry with a crème pâtissière and apricots on it.
Oh
So
my
everything
god.
that kind of revolves around those flavors usually is a hit for me.
Yeah.
I gravitate towards bakes that are not too sweet in general as
Mm.
well. So I really like puff pastry for that as opposed to cake.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very cool. That's awesome. And that sounds like an incredible combination with that apricot and the pastry cream, and the puff pastry, like the textures and the
Mm.
mouthfeel on that would be spectacular.
It's a
Oh, I
French
want some.
classic and it's perfect.
Yes, I'm hungry now.
Okay, well, what is your biggest baking fail?
Mm. For the longest time, caramel was really my nemesis. Lots of crystallization, lots of burning. I remember one day like failing at caramel like over and over and over again. And I think after like 5 or 6 crystallized caramel, I opened the door and I threw the pot in the backyard like as far as I could.
That's
That
awesome.
is awesome.
And then, well, I was practicing for like a baking show audition. So then I went out, took the pot, and then tried again. So yeah, a lot of fails included caramel for sure.
Fair. I can
And how's
understand that.
caramel for you?
Yeah,
And
I'm
how's caramel for
yeah.
you now? How's it treating you now?
We've reconciled, so usually
Good.
I'm doing okay with caramel. I burnt a couple in the tent, but that was mostly because I was too busy chatting with Bruno and Kyla.
Mhm.
But in general, I'm doing okay with caramel nowadays. I'm still not a boss in chocolate tempering, but that's
Mm.
on my things to improve list. And I have a good
Yeah.
friend who's a pro.
Mm.
That's always very, very helpful. So
Yeah.
chocolate is tricky for sure.
It
So as
is.
is caramel.
Do you do a dry
Yeah.
caramel or
Yeah.
a wet caramel usually?
I tend to do wet caramel unless
Mm.
I need a very small quantity. Then I'll do the dry method.
Mm.
It's pretty foolproof. But if you want to make a lot, or if you want to really control how golden it's going to be, then
Mhm.
the wet method is a little bit
Mhm.
Yeah.
superior.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes
I
sense.
agree. I do the wet caramel as well, and one of the tips I use, who am I to
No,
tell you
you
how to
give this
do
as a
something?
good
But
tip
you
because
could
they're macarons.
you you can actually fix crystallized caramel. Did you know that?
I
So
did read about that. I don't know how to.
Throw
okay,
the
so you
pot.
just
That's
add
how
a
you
little bit
fix it.
more. Throw the pot out the door. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Just do something different. Put
In.
pastry cream instead. No, no. But what you do is you add a little bit more water in there, and you reheat it up to the right temperature. So And that usually helps. So if you have because crystallization happens with the temperature changes and those happening too quickly, or if you, like me, I do sometimes I'll have it in my fridge, I'll take it out, I'll zap it in the microwave, but I don't use it all, put it back in the fridge, and then I get some crystallization. So yes, I've been able to say that. Maybe I'll do a reel on that one day. We
Yeah.
can cut all of that out, but
No.
but you can see that. And the other thing as well is I actually, before I actually put in my ingredients in my pot, I'll actually just take a pastry brush and then just do a quick coating of like avocado oil is what I usually use, and then just do that around. So that way you don't actually have to put your pastry brush around with a wet pastry brush
Water.
around to try to keep it down.
Mm.
Yeah, so that actually works too.
My process of making caramel is, you can tell that I come from quite far, so it's very like it's a protocol. So I start by like putting a mound of sugar in the middle of my pot, and the mound must not touch the edges.
Yep.
So
Ah.
just like this little pyramid, I pour it very slowly to make sure nothing sprinkles on the edges, and then I pour
Yep.
the water along the edges to surround the mound, and then I wait for the water to seep all the way to the top of the mountain of sugar. And I put it in the
Oh.
heat around like 5 or 6, and then as soon as it's like clear, then I crank it like really hard so that it crystallizes faster and I have less chances of crystallization. And obviously, I don't talk around it and I don't look at it.
No, you don't. Sometimes also, if you
I
actually,
feel like a baseball player. They have all these like little things they do before they
Superstition.
hit the ball. Like, yeah, very superstitious
Yep,
caramel maker.
I hear you. But the other actually trick that I learned as well is you put a lid on the pot when your caramel or when your sugar is actually dissolving. So just keep the lid on.
Oh,
Terrifies me.
that
then
that allows the caramel not to be watched and therefore not caramelizing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Very,
unless you have
very shy preparation.
I have a glass lid actually, so I could actually see it. But that works as well. Now that the show's done and you've got your whole life ahead of you here, what are your future plans and goals in the world of baking? What do you have going on, and what fun and exciting things lie ahead for Loic, the winner of season 7 of the Great Canadian Baking Show?
Well, one thing that I learned on the baking show is that I really enjoy the process of making TV. That's something that we don't talk a lot about when we talk about the baking show. We focus on the baking and on like the viewing with our communities. But while we're there, our job is to make a great baking TV show. We all love the show, and when we go to the tent, we're ultimately going to work to do that show. And I really love that process of working with the camera crew, working with the producers, and getting the stories as refined as you can, getting sharing the right information with the audience, to really make the show awesome. So I would love to work again in TV, and for me, the dream show would be to work on the other side of the production with a kids baking show. Some countries have a kids spin-off of the Bake Off,
Yes.
and often they have like former participants from the adult show being the judges or the host. So that's kind of like the number one dream, having Junior Bake Off in Canada and hosting.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
I
would
love
be
it.
awesome. And
Yeah.
I know, yeah, I think that would be spectacular, actually. I think something that's really, really needed, especially to inspire that next wave of bakers for the future baking shows. But I know recently you were in the Okanagan Valley doing a boot camp with high school students.
Yeah, well, I'm trained
That
as
was
I'm
so
a
cool.
teacher. I was trained as
Yeah,
a
yeah.
culinary teacher to begin with. So like again for the Junior Bake Off, like this is really the intersection of my skills. Like I think being the host of that show is all about being kind of sassy with the kids without making them cry. And as a teacher, that's kind of it's my expertise. So if a producer is listening, I'm the right person for your show.
We'll promote you as much
But
as
yeah,
we
I
I
possibly
will be
can.
watching.
That's an awesome
We
idea.
will be watching.
thank you.
You have 2 viewers.
Love it.
Awesome.
I'm
That's
sure
great.
more. I think it's just
Definitely.
fabulous. I love kids and cooking shows and baking shows, and the ones that are on right now. I mean, it is mind blowing what these kids can actually create, especially like Master Chef, Junior Master Chef, or Top Shelf. Those the cooking shows with the kids.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm like, how? And they're like 8 and 9 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I work with youth on a daily basis. I teach culinary arts in a high school, and then I'm involved in a variety of kind of like culinary art, like courses or workshops, or like the boot camp, as you were saying. That was the BC French Games,
Mhm.
and yeah, they have a lot of skills. Often they're very resilient. Whenever I teach them how to make caramel, they're like, "It's not that complicated. Like, I don't need to do all these weird steps that you're telling me about. They just whip it up." Uh,
Did you tell them you're throwing the pot out the
Oh,
backyard
I
story?
share all of my stories
Yeah,
with the
that's awesome.
students.
Yeah. Put a
So
human
yeah,
face on it.
I really like working with students, with youth in general. They're always kind of willing to try new techniques. There's not that element of fear or
Mm.
or feeling that the task is too big. They're always down to making complicated cakes and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and some of the pictures you posted and videos that you posted of some of the work that they did
It
was
was great.
absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
We had so much fun. I brought them a challenge where they were drawing a commercial cookie out of a bag, like Oreos and bear
Yeah.
claws and so forth. And they had to like imitate them without a recipe. So I gave them kind of like basic knowledge about cookies, and every team made actually better cookies than the commercial ones. So yeah, that was great. That was a great weekend, and they got to make cake for 160 people, and that's also
Yeah.
like really a
That's
moment of
crazy.
pride for them. I like teaching culinary arts because there's something to present, and
Mhm.
the students are often part of the community through what they are making. Just this week at the high school, there was a presentation from our graduating students, and like the buffet was all prepared by my students, and members of the community
Amazing.
coming to see those final graduation presentation were able to like eat cookies and crackers and dips and spreads that like were made by my students. And yeah, I find food is really kind of like a vessel of social interaction often.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Food brings people together, and especially baked goods.
yeah.
Can never go wrong with those.
Yeah.
That's
For sure.
awesome. Very,
Sounds
very cool. That's
great goals. Awesome. All right. Guess what time it is?
it is time for this or that Loic
Ooh.
edition. So
Woohoo!
we're gonna throw out, woo, exciting, the first ever this or that. So we're gonna throw out some things, and then you let us know.
We're gonna throw a
We're
pot
gonna
into the yard.
We're
throw,
gonna throw some
we're gonna
pots of
we're
caramel.
gonna
Yeah.
throw exactly. We're gonna throw a pot of caramel out that back door, and you're gonna let us know your preference. So
That
We'll
sounds
give
good.
you a,
I'm already ready for the raisin one.
oh yeah, I bet you.
how did you know that was that?
It's always there.
It had to be. You know, it had to be. Wouldn't you be disappointed if it wasn't on the
Yeah, I
list?
would be.
There you go. See,
All right.
told ya. So we're going to start off with that one. Butter tarts.
No raisins.
Raisins?
You
Oh, so I didn't even,
No raisins
didn't
ever.
even need to tell you the options. Okay,
No raisins.
got it. We
Got it.
know how Loic feels on this one.
Yes, we had
Yeah.
a lot of arguments with Andrew, who's a raisins lover. I will pick them out of absolutely everything.
Everything. I said
Everything.
on our poll online, I said I realized that I like raisins if they've been soaked in rum. So they're okay that way.
Yeah,
And
there's so
me-
many other things to soak in rum.
Or just drink
There's
rum,
other
right?
things out there.
Yeah, you don't even need to soak anything in it.
I personally often replace the
give me the
raisins
rum.
in recipes by apricots, dried apricots.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah,
That's
you
a
Yeah,
can
good
soak
plan.
them in
I
rum.
actually use currants
That's what I use too,
in
yeah.
butter tarts. That's what I have on there. Or dried cranberries are
I've
always
never
a good
made a
substitution
butter
as
tart.
well. Dried cherries. No,
Me neither.
well,
Yeah.
no.
Well, we'll have to do that as a challenge.
There's so many basics that I've never made because I started baking with the baking show, and
Yeah.
they don't do that many basics. So,
Yeah,
like, I've never
true.
made a cupcake, for example.
Never made a
Okay,
cupcake.
wait.
I've iced 300 the other day, but I never
Yeah,
made a cupcake.
Huh?
Even muffins.
Well, there you go. There you go.
I mean, it's
Anyhow,
just like
all
making
right.
cakes, really, except smaller. And you don't really
They're
like
just
making
smaller
cakes all that
versions.
much. So
Well,
pretty
yeah,
good.
that's probably it, right? You don't like doing cakes to begin with.
You
So
gotta
why
do
would
what
you
you
make
enjoy.
cupcakes?
Cakes are growing on me. yeah.
They're a
Cool.
real chance to be creative. That's what I really like about cake is the creative aspect of it. Like that's the art, you know. Although you can be artistic with so
Absolutely.
many other things as well. So, okay, next question. Chocolate, dark milk or white?
Dark.
Ooh.
It's
Mm,
easier to temper as well.
Ah, that's a good reason. Yeah, okay.
that is a very good reason. Okay. Cake or pie?
Pie. Pie,
Mm.
because I can feature seasonal ingredients. I find like
Mm,
pies and tarts are really great because you can just, yeah, it's always tasting like the moment of the year.
Oh, I like that.
perfect.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Hmm.
Vanilla.
Ooh,
I'm a vanilla gal too.
I do like vanilla. Good, proper
Yeah.
vanilla, yeah.
So I think we know the answer to this next one. Buttercream or fondant?
Oh, buttercream over fondant. But
What's your
still, as a kid, I would scrape off pretty much any form of icing of cakes. Like if I'd go to like a kid's
oh,
birthday party, like I would just like eat the sponge and that's it. So I've
oh,
never been,
interesting.
yeah, never been a big
So
Never
fan
no
of
never
just
covering. No covering needed,
no
there you
only
go.
covering.
naked cakes.
So if you're gonna do buttercream, what's your favorite go-to buttercream?
I
Mhm.
do Swiss meringue buttercream a lot, but I kind of like ermine buttercream as well.
Mm,
It's a
I
little bit
haven't tried
less
that one
sweet.
yet. Hmm.
me neither. Me neither.
I have a hard
Yeah,
time getting
it's we
past
basically
flour
start with
and
a roux and
yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna have to try it.
But yeah, like if I have to cover a cake with anything, I'll always kind of prefer like a thin glaze, like a little lemon glaze
Mm,
or something, rather
Oh
than like
yeah.
a thick layer of buttercream. For me,
okay.
buttercream is more like cake paint. I use it for
Cake.
decoration when needed,
Yeah,
but
makes
yeah,
sense.
Sure makes things pretty though.
yes,
It does. Okay, sweet or savory pastries?
savory.
I think we're all in agreement on
Mm,
that. We're both pretty
Yeah.
much
hmm.
savory people. We create the sweet stuff, but we like to eat the savory stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And at the baking show, Kathy was just like a savior because so many of her bakes were savory. Like in practice, like we only ate her bakes. She basically fed us for the whole duration of the show because we were we didn't want to cook for ourselves after baking all that, and we didn't want to eat our
Yeah.
baked goods either. So we would just go to Kathy and eat her smoked salmon cookie
Oh,
cake or yeah,
Oh, the
sausage
best.
roll.
yeah, she was amazing. I love that moment with her and Kyla over that pierogi bake
Oh,
she did.
Oh my God,
That
they showed only a
yeah.
few seconds of that, but that was a strong moment of the show. Like that lasted
Hmm.
yeah.
many minutes, and that was very,
Oh,
yeah, we were all crying.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
the love. You could feel it. You could feel it just, as a not even being in the tent, you just felt
Yeah.
that moment
We were
and
bawling
how it
too.
brought
Yeah.
Kyla back. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? It was just such a special moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Whole wheat or white bread?
Ooh, maybe white.
Mm,
Ooh,
hmm.
that shocked me for some
I
Yeah.
could get
reason.
behind that.
I don't know why. I just 100% expected you to say whole wheat right away, and you had the pause, and then I was like, "What?"
Yeah,
And then you're like,
no, maybe white
"Okay."
bread. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a white bread. I don't like whole wheat at all. Like I really don't. Unless it's like, I don't know.
I just feel
It's
like if
got to
I'm
be
gonna
really
eat bread,
fresh.
then I should eat healthy bread. I don't know,
Not
healthier.
necessarily healthy.
I know.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I do enjoy like a sourdough, but still
Mm,
like with
Yeah,
kind of like a percentage of white flour in it. Like yeah,
hmm.
yeah,
Yep. Okay.
sourdough's good. Sourdough's my favorite, I would
Yeah.
say. I'm horrible at making
Me
it,
too.
but I really, really enjoy it. So,
I'm not really good either.
no,
That's
you're not
sourdough.
good at making sourdough. It's
No,
just
that's
so
not
time
my. That's not.
consuming.
I do a lot of like overnight poolish bread.
Yeah, yeah,
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
with a fermented sponge, I find I get like a bit of flavor. I
yeah.
like playing around with flavors when I make bread. I'm working like
Mm-hmm.
a turmeric bread recipe these days,
Oh.
turmeric and sunflowers.
Oh, that would be such a pretty
Um,
color.
oh yeah, it's beautiful. There's a picture on my
Yeah.
Instagram. But yeah, and I find like the white flour kind of allows for a little bit more of other flavors to really come through.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yep.
right, I accept
And it's a
that
good.
Love
answer.
that.
That's a good answer.
Yep.
I'm redeeming myself.
Yeah, you didn't have to.
There's no judgment on how you answer these
Okay.
questions.
No, not at
Maybe
all.
Andrew is judging you on the butter tart one, but other than that, Lisa and I are
Half
not
of
judging.
Canada who likes raisins is judging me right now, but that's okay.
I It's so true, though. Our poll was almost 50-50. It was
Yeah.
back and forth the whole time. Yeah.
They should actually hire me to do like a raisins like ad on TV, and where like I redeem myself, and actually like there I'm like, they show all the times I said like raisins are evil, and then like I eat their raisins out of the box, and I'm like, yeah, that's actually good. That would be a great ad.
That would be. I agree. See,
You
you
should
got a
probably
couple of things, good projects on the go.
I'm
go to
shopping for
Sunmade and sell
for a
that to
company
them.
to hire me for an ad right now.
Sounds like a good idea.
That's
The
awesome.
red
I
little
love it,
box.
baby.
Sunripe.
Yeah.
Is that
Sunripe, yeah.
Sunripe?
Sunmade.
There you go. Sunripe.
Sunripe, if you're listening.
Oh,
Sunripe.
Sunmade?
No, I don't know.
We should Google that.
I'm like, wait, Sunripe.
We'll Google it and then we can edit in. Sunmade raisins are the best.
Yes.
Sunripe raisins are the best.
Whatever.
So whichever it is, and then we'll just go, hey, if you are listening, we need a sponsor.
I'm just checking. I'm checking right now because I can't handle this. Sunripe.
Sunmade.
Sunrise.
Sunripe.
Sunrise.
I think you're right. I think
Sunmade.
Sunrise.
No, Sunripe.
Sunripe. Oh, so we were like totally wrong.
I Google searched Sunripe raisins and it came up Sunmade raisins. So I was right.
Sunmade raisins. There we go.
Sunmade.
So Sunmade raisins. If you're out there listening,
Loïc is going to be your sponsor. So make some good raisins.
And we could use one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next
I'll
question.
come up with recipes with raisins that I actually like. I'll be
There
creative.
you go.
Create your own raisins. You're going to start growing grapes. I mean, you're in a great
Actually, grapes grow in my valley, so I could technically make my own raisins. Yeah.
I mean, would you rather make raisins or make wine?
Yeah, I do dabble in alcohol making. I make my own beer sometimes, and I've made mead in the past.
Yeah,
I like making anything.
That's better than making raisins. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cinnamon buns, cream cheese icing or sticky buns?
Cream cheese icing, cinnamon buns. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any other way to have those?
I like mine with salted caramel.
Great classic.
I'd prefer to have them with salted caramel. That's how I do mine.
Yeah, this is still new for me. Like growing up in Quebec, I don't know. In my environment, like cinnamon buns are really not a thing. So it's I would say I have a couple of years to catch up on.
Okay, so
I'll send you some with salted caramel.
Oh. Yeah, those sound actually pretty good. Actually, you posted those not that long ago.
Yeah,
those parquet ones. Those are fabulous.
Pretty good.
This one's near and dear to my heart. Macarons or macaroons?
Oh, they're macaron. Well, if they are two shells with a filling, that's a macaron. A macaroon is the coconut thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you watch?
So yeah.
Yes.
It drives me crazy on British when they are calling them macaroons. I just yell at my TV every single time. Like, that's not a macaroon!
Okay, so actually I misinterpreted your question. You meant, do I prefer macaroons or macaron?
I also like your answer.
That's okay, but this other argument is fabulous too.
Question, so I was like, no. Okay, we can ask it again if you want.
No, because we need to educate people. Because I will forever get angry at people for calling them macaroons. Oh,
and although I do enjoy a macaroon, I prefer a macaron. It's also, there's more variety and
Yes, absolutely. I can't agree with you more.
She's big on the macaron. Macaron. I'm so bad at pronouncing.
Yeah, although you say it much better than I do.
All these words that also exist in French, like croissant and macaron, it's like impossible for me to say them with the French accent. My students are always like, "Oh, you're so snob. Like, why do you say that with this?" I'm like, "This is my real voice."
That's your voice. How can you not say it the way you say it? I just flub it up every time. I don't know why I bother trying. That's hilarious. Okay. Well, we talked about cakes. You don't really love cakes, but layer cakes or sheet cakes?
Layer cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, layer cake, absolutely. Well, you can put fillings in layer cakes, which is nice. Because although I don't eat the icing, I do enjoy a good filling in a cake. Mm-hmm. And it's nice if you're gonna do a cake. You want to have some height.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for playing this or that with us. We're wrapping things up here. Loïc, we so appreciate you taking the time and putting up with all our technical difficulties. As soon as I get my new computer, this will be much faster, and we'll have you back another time, and you'll be amazed at how much more quickly we get things done. But before we have you sign off, we just would like to ask you, what is the baking scrap, your tips or trick that you can give to our baking community out there?
Well, kitchen tip. I'm a big fan of using springform pans to bake my cakes. And the reason why is because you don't have to cut parchment rounds. What I do is I just tear parchment in a rectangle form. I put the bottom of the pan on the table. I put the parchment over, and then I clip everything around, and I
Slip
let
it in.
everything just be the way it is. I find that's a big time saver, and I
Mhm.
rarely have leakage with that approach, even if the
Mhm.
batter is really runny. So that's definitely one of my kitchen hacks. Another of my kitchen hack is that if you're going to make pastry cream or anything that requires you to temper eggs, um, do it in two pots with a handle, because when you're whisking your egg yolks and you're gonna
Mhm.
pour the hot milk or the hot fruit juice or whatever in, you don't want the bowl to spin with your whisk, and the egg yolks and sometimes the cornstarch can be really thick. So I use pots with handles, and this way I can kind of like squeeze the handle of the pot with the egg yolks under my arm while I whisk, while I use the hand of that arm to actually pour the hot liquid to temper. So instead of using bowl and pot, I use two pots. That saves me a lot of spinning the bowl on the counter.
Why does
That's
it
awesome.
feel that's a
And
great tip? I always feel like
Thank you.
I'm the only one who spins the bowl, and I'm like, how do people do this?
Yeah.
no, that is awesome. Life-changing tip and trick from Loic, which is awesome. And I
Yeah.
know you're a real multitasker. My favorite thing that you ever did was when you were working on something and then you had to add some butter to your Swiss meringue buttercream. Awesome. I loved it. I've tried it. Hit and
What,
miss for me. You look like you had a better a landing percentage on yours, but
throwing it
that's so
from
fun.
across the table?
Yeah, that's
Across
one
the
of my
room.
favorite games in the kitchen. I do it at school as well with the students. So you throw a chunk of butter in the stand mixer, and then if you succeed, you step one step backwards and then throw another chunk until you finally miss. Usually there's not too much waste of butter because the chunk that you miss ends up just like sticking on the bowl or on the head
Yep.
of the stand mixer. It's a
Yeah.
little bit messier, but it all ends up in your buttercream anyways. So
That's awesome. I
Oh,
love
it's
that.
funny. That's awesome. And that's part of having fun, right? Through the whole entire
yeah,
thing. Just find the fun.
Absolutely. Find the fun and the joy. And
Yeah.
baking is about that, right? It's about spreading joy. It's about baking joy. It's about sharing.
and it's about creating
It's
chaos around you.
chaos is always welcome. And thank you for dealing with our chaos today. I think
Yeah.
that
That was
pretty
pretty
much sums
reasonable.
up.
We
You
really
asked
appreciate it.
one thing in the kitchen that I would not live without is
Yep.
definitely a scale.
Yep.
Yeah.
I weigh everything, absolutely everything, and I also nothing infuriates me more than a cheap whisk, especially when the prongs just like stick out of like the handle. Like no, like a good whisk is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I have a whole
Yep.
bunch of
No,
whisks, and the other
absolutely.
day I was whisking, and the handle just popped right off, and I just was like, it was a caramel pot out the back door
It
window
ended
for
up in the
or
backyard
victim
with the
moment for
pot.
me. Pretty much, I was just like, forget this, not dealing with this anymore. So, yeah,
In the kitchen supply cemetery.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
No,
I
don't
can't
people
let
think
my
don't
we
do
have
it.
dogs
like
go
a
out
bunch of
there.
like baking stuff in our backyards.
You're giving me
I bet. And I
ideas.
think that's and I must say actually, since really becoming serious in this whole baking world and really like immersing myself in it, um I have never been so broke. 'Cause- and especially watching but
Yeah.
especially watching shows and then
Hmm.
like the Great Canadian Baking Show
Yeah.
and what season was that? I think it was season 6 when I mean people were just creating all these incredibly amazing baked goods, but they had all of these ingredients that I'd never
It was the
heard
weird
before or
ingredient
tools
season.
that were used.
Yeah.
It was the weird ingredient season
Yeah.
and it was awesome because I learned so much I never knew I needed to learn about all these weird and wonderful ingredients, but trying to find them
It was
In
That
expensive.
was
Preston.
the effort. That was the effort. And exactly. So we'd go somewhere and I'd be like, oh, we have to stop at, this type of store here because I need to find XYZ. And, it was a rat race.
That
It
was
was a
yeah, that
scavenger hunt.
that was definitely one of the highlights of being on the baking show and in the tent. Like, there's a team there. They are fantastic. Like, they can source anything, like from a
Nice.
variety of seaweeds for my finale cake to 2 pounds of nasturtium. Like, do you imagine like how many flowers is like 2 pounds of nasturtium? They're
That's a
like, no
lot.
That's
problem.
a lot.
Here they are on
That's
your doorstep.
amazing.
Oh,
See,
that's
I'm in search of some
awesome.
of those right now. So,
Nasturtiums?
yeah. So, do you
Oh,
know? Yeah. Well, or any sort of edible flower right now.
that's
And
hard to find,
that's
actually.
proving to be a bit difficult.
Yeah.
I am so grateful that you were here with us today, Loic. We're very
Thank
Yes.
you for
excited
having
that
me
you
on
could.
episode 1. I'm excited to listen to our episode and all the subsequent episodes after that.
It's been such an honor having you here, having conversations with us, having a little bit of fun, and learning a little bit more about you and your experiences. Your tips and tricks are invaluable, and all the stories you shared with us today. We do so very much appreciate it. We are so looking forward to seeing your show. The Canadian Kids Baking Championship would be amazing, and so I hope that that comes to TV sooner than later. So,
Yeah,
because I think it would be so much fun.
Thank you so much.
100%.
And thank you for creating content here in Canada about baking, about the baking show. This is really awesome that you're contributing to that community.
Thank you so
That's
much,
I
Loic.
think we're going to have some fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And
Yeah.
it wouldn't be possible without people like you
Mhm.
agreeing to come and share your time and experiences with us. So we so very much appreciate it, and hopefully we'll have you come back again another day, especially when you launch your newest TV venture.
Yeah,
Can't
invite
wait.
me back with friends next time.
With
Okay.
friends would be awesome. We
Sounds
could
like
have
a
a
great idea.
season 7 reunion show.
Yeah,
Now I
always
need a
done.
better
And we'll be
computer for
listening.
that.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's true.
It is true.
Awesome.
Okay, go make your
Okay.
lovely beet and ginger creation,
Yes.
and can't wait to see it. I know you're going to do fantastic with it. It's going to be posted on Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully.
All right. All right.
Sounds good.
Fingers crossed.
See you later, Loic.
Have a good afternoon.
You
You
too.
too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Christina.
Bye. See you, Lisa.
Bye.